everyone, welcome back to part 2 of Understanding our Present through Past with nothing more, nothing less than the Ladies Mercury 857 Vol I. I'm sorry I had to interrupt part 1, but I almost died. My asthma kicked in, so I said let me have a break. I thought I was shooting. We promised the Crimean War, and we also want to add the Colonial appointment. So if you don't know much about the history of Britain, pre-modern colonialism, this is an important document to at least understand the relationship of Britain with the world. And instead of reading the Crimean bit first, which we could do, we are going to read the Colonial appointment now, which is in page 5. The Colonial appointment, a sketch from real life. Amidst the almost infinite variety of schemes, theories, and pursuits which in these days of gold finding and electricity distract the mind and unfitted for the steady pursuits of it start again. Do you know, this is how difficult of a task is in front of me. This is not easy. The Colonial appointment. Amidst the almost infinite variety of schemes, theories, and pursuits which in these days of gold finding and electricity distract the mind and are fitted for the steady pursuits of knowledge and for the calm enjoyment of respectable, because well-earned competence, perhaps none has exercised a more powerful and in many instances a more fatal influence on the destinies of mankind than the monomania for immigration. We called it by no other name. I recall you, let me recall you, reader, watcher, that we are talking about the Colonial appointment, but this lady, she's quite intelligent. So, the monomania for immigration, we call it by no other name, which has been for the last years so widely diffused. We speak not now of immigration in its largest sense, as promoted by philanthropists for the amelioration of the condition of the working classes, many of whom may by its means be rescued from the misery and degradation of the workhouse, the bear and the dread of England's honest and stalwart peasantry, and placed in a position where by industry and frugality they may secure to themselves and their children a respectable maintenance, and frequently something more. This is undoubtedly and undeniably beneficial, and thousands of families who have availed themselves of the assistances thus preferred them have deep reason for heartfelt gratitude. This understanding, based on the unerring principles of love to God and God-will to man, cannot but draw down a blessing on its efforts. The species of immigration we would deprecate is that of young men, well educated, with good abilities and fitted for competition in the arena of civilized life, who, for no other reason, if reason it may be called, than an unsettled state of mind and a want of energy and fixity of purpose, abandon their professions or callings, leave anxious friends, and give up all their prospects of future well-doing to follow the elusive dream never destined to be realized, and to seek their abode in some far-off clime, where Arcadian delights and blissful bowers are to satisfy all the cravings of their deceased imaginations. Thousands of young men similarly circumstanced have thus been have thus bidden a deal to their native land to seek the balmy regions where the air is laden with the spicy gales of Araby the blessed, and this sounds enchantingly in the melodious numbers of Moore. But those who have experienced a residence in tropical or even in warm climates say the reality is one toute autre affaire. I'll stop you here. I'm not one using the racist Moore. It's here on the text, and I'll make a point to show you. Okay? Nothing to do with me following Portugal Moore. The heavy and incessant rains, when they do set in, the mosquitoes, white ants, and numerous other destructive and annoying insects that generated astonishing quickness beneath those fervid skies, these are a few of the drawbacks on the perfectibility of colonial life, which are generally overlooked or passed by as the little consequences. Then again, although many fruits, and delicious ones too, grow almost spontaneously in those regions, it must not be forgotten that fruit, though valuable as refreshment, is not fitted for the staple articles of the food, and that although it almost grow by itself, it will not gather itself, but quickly ripens and drops in heaps, soon becoming decomposed and consequently detrimental to health. So, without constant attention, the once cultured garden is transformed into wilderness. Labor, too, is generally speaking scarce and exorbitantly high, so that what a person cannot do himself often has to be left undone. And it can hardly be expected that those for whom out-of-doors exercise at any extent is almost novel should suddenly become inspired with a taste for life, for it, especially in an atmosphere which predisposes to indolence and lassitude. And thus it frequently happens that those who start on this adventurous course, buoyant with youth and health, and sanguine in spirits, return in a few years, listless, discontented men, enervated in health, depressed in spirits, indisposed for exertion, and with the consciousness that they have thrown away the opportunities of advancement, each in his peculiar path, and that they have wasted some of the best years of their existence. Sometimes, unfortunately, the mischief is not limited to themselves, for when once these youth errants have decided on leaving the country, they fancy that the paradise to which they are bound will not be complete without an Eve, and many a fair girl, brought up, if not in luxury, yet amidst 1,000 nameless refinements and comforts that seem natural to an English home, have listened to the seductive strain, "Come o'er the sea, maiden with me." And after a little fearful hesitation, he, assured by brilliant prospects held out to her, and a few misgivings, easily silenced if the heart is interested, has consented to share the fortune of one of these wanderers, and plunge heart and hand to his, in real or wool, little dreaming, probably, of all that promise involves. This important point once settled, the preparations for the voyage, the hasty marriage, the taking leave of attached and valued friends, and the emotions, half hopeful, half fearful, inseparable from the contemplated undertaking, kicked the damsel's mind in a perpetual reel during the short time intervening before her departure. I'm in the same situation. I was looking at wedding dresses today and sending my LOVE pictures of the dress. You're not supposed to share the dress you're going to wear with the man you're going to wear with. But I was sending in the dresses. I'm in the same situation. This is hilarious. Hold on a bit. Um, and it's ironic because he's from Poland, and this one is marrying to leave. I hope that doesn't end my fate, doesn't end up being my fate, which is most likely. Um, well, it is for both parties a strong mutual attachment pressed in under the trying circumstances which must, to some degree, be their portion, and allows for those to whom such support and incentives to exertion are wanting. Perhaps the following sketch, founded on actual occurrences, may illustrate what is here advanced, but it should be borne in mind that few persons leave home so fully equipped with every imaginable requisite, and with prospects so flattering as our hero and heroine, while few still have no readily at command the means of terminating their expatriation just when it seems most pleasant and expedient to do so. With the majority of immigrants of this class, their means are nearly, if not quite, exhausted by the necessary equipments for a long voyage and the expenses attendant upon it, and they land on a distant shore comparatively without resources to commence a career for which all their previous life has singularly unfitted them. All is strange, all is new, and a little time is necessarily lost while debating on the best mode of proceeding. This determined that the struggle begin in earnest, and an arduous one it frequently is. We have been told by those whose experience testifies to the truth of the assertion that the yearning for home, or homesickness, as it is familiarly termed, becomes in some cases a positive illness for which medical aid, even if procurable, is unavailing, for whom can minister to a mind diseased, and when return is difficult or impracticable or too long deferred, the illness assumes a serious and sometimes a fatal character. Care and discrimination, judgment and forethought are therefore absolutely necessary in taking so decisive a step. Florence Gordon was an orphan, accomplished, amiable, intelligent, and possessing, in an eminent degree, that loving trustfulness and hopeful spirit of endurance which constitute woman's peculiar charm. Her position was not a happy one. I'm going to jump this bit, it's a bit disturbing. Alfred Saville had been destined for the war, but its dry details and endless ambiguities disgusted him at the outset, and he lacked the diligent perseverance and untiring energy with which is absolutely necessary the followers of Tammy should be endowed. I'm going to jump against a bit because this is a bit boring. The revulsion of feeling was strong, almost overwhelming, when Mr. Saville one day sought Florence, and explaining to her his altered views, entreated her promise to fix an early day for their marriage, and earnestly besought her to accompany him to his distant future home, whose advantages and delights he painted in glowing colors. At first Florence only sighed, and declared that thing was impossible. Her friends would never consent to it. And I'm going to jump because this is one of those stories that is truly part of you have At the wedding they arrived, and attended by her 5 cousins, not one of whom would consent to be omitted, and one chosen friend of her own as bridesmaids. Florence was given by her uncle to Mr. Saville. Within a month of their nuptials, the newly wedded pair were to sail for their far home. I'm jumping again. Maps were produced delineating the country to which they were bound, and even a plan of the town in which the locality was fixed. But anything looks well up on paper, and the circumstance of its having been suggested to Mrs. Saville that perhaps it would be advisable to take out a house ready constructed, so that it might be put together on their arrival. The town of this, so they are not describing the town. But this is a personal story of the colonial appointment. People, instead of leaving to the Moros' lands for holidays, in Portugal, other points, they just decide to, instead of mosquitoes, let's just go to colonial lands, and they end up in lands that are appointed by the government for colonization. And their relationship develops as she can't adapt to the colonial life, but they are in better situation than they are back home, obviously. Then he eventually arrives in England, and I read arrived in England. A small appointment was soon procured for Mr. Saville, and as he was in a government office, he will not aver that he was too hardly work. His health was now completely reestablished. What do you think of this? Of the craze of young people at the time of colonialism, and this author refusing to call it colonialism as such, and insists that it's simply immigration. You might do have more advantages than when you go to places where mosquitoes go for holidays to more lands, but she sees it as just a debt. However, there were no visas for them arriving. They had appointed house constructions, they had all the financial means and proposed to them by the government. So I disagree with her. I don't think that is mass migration, is not immigration, it's truly colonialism. The financial means and the services were there. We will read briefly about, so we read the colonial appointment, which is a tale narrative, and we could read about the fine arts, the Royal Academy, but I'd like to read a bit about the role of Queen Victoria in the Crimean War. Okay, so let's read a bit. Sure too must have been the feelings of Queen Victoria on the day when the white handkerchief was waved from the balcony of Buckingham Palace, and when, with a cheer that rent the air, the English guards bade farewell to their sovereign to go forth and engage in a strife more terrible and momentous, more fiery and enduring than that of 588. The line of conduct our Queen has pursued towards her soldiers since the beginning of the late war, the Crimean War, was brought her into closer with them, has been calculated no less than her domestic virtues to endear her to the mass of her people. Throughout the most hazardous portion of the Crimean campaign, in the time when endurance, the attribute of the British soldier, I'm just going to interrupt, bear in mind that this is an English magazine and it's talking about the British soldier, but the Turkish soldiers were allies of the British and fought brilliantly in the war as well, and they won because of that. Let's keep going. The attribute of the British soldier, the quality which won for us Waterloo and Inkerman, was peculiarly called into play when our troops had to undergo all the stern hardship, labor, and privations attendant on warfare. The leading journal published various letters from private soldiers. Wonderful and touching were those letters from the watchfire, full of rough, homely pathos and manly eloquence. But one feature in particular scarcely any thoughtful reader could fail to notice. While setting forth his willingness to fight, day and day it was for his queen and country that the soldier declared himself ready to die. And when that warm-hearted womanly letter, wherein the first lady of the land assured those noble fellows of her hearty sympathy in their trials and privations, was posted at the camp, how much each manly face had glowed as the proclamation was read. And so to the end of the strife the enthusiasm never flagged, until the war-worn survivors of the hero band were welcomed back to England by the same hand which had waved them so heartily a farewell. And trials, hardships, and disappointments were forgotten in the glow of triumph, recognition, and welcome which burst upon the returning heroes. The particulars of the Queen's life are generally well known. A short notice of its principal events may not, however, be out of place. So you can see again that the date, my friends, England. She was educated in England. She's a fantastic leader of soldiers, Queen Victoria. This is truly indicative of the time, how women could ascend to leadership if their opportunities were available, and leadership at all levels. For example, a mother leading her children into prayer and feeding them and training them to be fantastic adults. So there is no shortage of leadership. Another woman working with her children, carrying the goat, and is type of mutual support, how the mother supports the child and the child supports the mother. And marriage, the institution of marriage of the time was questioned and was no longer even seen as a haven of opportunities for women. For example, we have here a fantastic excerpt titled "Married Misery or a Fault and Its Consequences," as shown in the life of Marie de la Meurtrier. Is another excerpt, and women meditating. Meditating about life. Women women's role as in the first step of a man's as a baby. The cradle, the first cradle. The Alhambra. All these are fantastic paintings, articles by women. Charity and Hope, again part of Married Misery or Fault and its Consequences by Marie de Malapierre. And women at the end. Women as spiritual leaders, and on top of the figure, the Mother of Christ, Virgin Mary. And look how a man dressed in Catholic robes, if you look closer at the embroidery in his robes. And this seems like the Vatican here. Can you see the little Vatican here on the man's feet? So assume he's a pope. Look at the Vatican here at the corner. And he's kneeling to Virgin Mary. And she has Jesus in her arms. Such is the imagery and power conferred to women. And here is the Church of Nativity at Bethlehem. And look, the cross, Holy Land. And most important, look at, you see Muslims to one side, Muslims set to one side, and you see the Western nobility getting in the church, getting further in, and above them, look well, so you have Muslims set on this side. Am I moving the right hand? On here, can you see the Arabs here? I'm sorry for referring them as Muslims, the Arabs, the natives. And then you will see the European costumes, namely English in this case, and the cross standing above them, precisely above them. Fantastic illustration of the importance of Palestine for Christianity. Now let's read this bit. The Church of the Nativity at Bethlehem. Welcome to Christmas. The festive season, so 857, we're talking about December 857. Welcome to Christmas. The festive season has come round again, and which of us would refuse to give it hearty greeting? Has it not a claim on our friendship and generosity? Has it not given us many a happy hour? Has it not made the mouth sing and the feet dance? And has it not left behind it many a sweet and pleasant memory that we would not lose for the world? As the waits pour forth their plaintive music in the night, as the carolers sing their Christmas song, as the bell rings out a joyous peal, and as thousands of families meet together, that perhaps only meet once in the year, let us make the most of Christmas and give it the heartiest welcome it ever received. With more or less rejoicing, Christmas is kept up throughout the world, that world, at least, which has been enlightened by the religion of Him in whose honor and memory the feast has been established. And it is good to think of the festive time in such a connection as this. East and west, north and south, in burning heat and freezing cold, people are keeping up Christmas. Its return seems to draw us closer together in the bonds of brotherhood. More than this, the character of the feast, the hallowed associations which belong to it, make it something better than a mere holiday. We cannot help thinking, and we would not, if we could, of one whose birth is thus celebrated, and whose birthright song was chanted by angels over an obscure inn in Bethlehem of Judea. Bethlehem is a place of peculiar interest, and at Christmas time we think of Bethlehem more than any other reason of the year. It is a very ancient city and is distant from Jerusalem about 6 miles. It is pleasantly situated in the brow of an eminence in a very fertile spot. Between the clefts of the rock where the soil is cultivated, vines, figs, and olives appear to grow in great luxuriance, and fully to warrant its old name, that of Ephrata, or the fruitful. Formerly it belonged to the tribe of Judah, and was commonly called the city of David. The principal object of attraction at Bethlehem is the Church of the Nativity. The interior of the celebrated edifice is represented in or engraving. The building is of high antiquity, and though often injured and as often repaired, it still remains marks of its Grecian origin. The Church of the Nativity belonged collectively to the Greeks, Latins, and Armenians. On the pavement at the foot of the altar is a marble star in allusion to the miraculous star which guided the Magi in the days of Herod. The Greeks occupied the choir of the Magi as well as the two other naves, which are seldom used. 2 spiral staircases, each composed of 15 steps, open to the side of the outer church and conduct to a subterranean crypt under the choir. At the further extremity of this vault is a spot where tradition reports the Saviour to have been born. The spot is marked by white marble encrusted with jasper and surrounded by a circle of silver, having rays resembling those by which the sun is represented. At a short distance to the south is a separate crypt, where a block of marble is said to indicate the spot where the Magi spread their gifts at the feet of the Holy Child. The marble is hollowed in the form of a manga. The church is adorned with some beautiful altars and several valuable pictures of the Italian and Spanish school. The first erection of the Church of the Nativity is attributed to Helena and Constantine the Great. So we're talking about Greeks, okay? The passion for building religious edifices over places hallowed by events recorded in sacred history has in some instances perplexed modern travelers, it being evident that the localities have been mistaken. But there is not the slightest ground for skepticism with regard to the church at Bethlehem. It is so well authenticated by ancient writers as to admit of no dispute. Within that old church, the Day of the Nativity is celebrated by Greeks, Latins, and Armenians. Keeping Christmas at Bethlehem must have something about it exceedingly impressive. But whether at Bethlehem or any other locality in the world, the lesson of goodwill towards man, which Christmas brings with it is the same. It appeals for help on behalf of the poor. It calls for sympathy as well as a Christmas doll, and when its appeal is right felt, it opens the heart and the purse together. We need not go to Bethlehem nor worship in the Church of the Nativity to learn this lesson of charity. With the bleak frosty winds blowing, and poor shivering creatures creeping into out-of-the-way places for shelter, while Christmas fires are burning and Christmas bells are ringing, who would not stretch out a helping hand for the sake of humanity, for the sake of Christmas, for the sake of him who knew what it was to be poor, and had not where to lay his head? Who would not do it? What do you think? What do you think it means that the cross is? You can see that is almost the cross is falling off the men's heads. Look at this. Why isn't the cross above their heads, standing upright, and is bent forward? Like if the house is falling over their heads. Interesting. There's many other interesting narratives of the time that deserve attention, but unfortunately today might not be the best place. So I read the Colonial Appointment, page 311. I did jump a bit because it was very boring. I read, I was supposed to read the Fine Arts Royal Academy, but I didn't. I read the Church of the Nativity at Bethlehem, page 227. I read an excerpt of Her Majesty Queen Victoria on page 1. And I would love to read more, but today I don't think it's possible. I like to read the articles about Spain. They have many. They have one Chateau à Espagne, or the Look Lisa Flirt. They have one about Norwegian fishers on Lake Minnesota. They have more about Spain here. They teach German, they teach French, and this is really a fantastic magazine. And they have one in particular, Social Employment of Women, which we will jump to see whether or corroboration that women are far more apt to take leadership positions is correct or not. Social employment of women. Since Florence Nightingale went out on her mission of charity to the East. I'm just going to interrupt here. Do you see that Florence Nightingale was in the Crimean War, I believe, wasn't she? Treating English, I believe so, as soldiers, I'm not quite sure. Let's start. Since Florence Nightingale went out on her mission of charity to the East, it has become a matter of consideration in this country whether the services of refined and educated women might not be made available in ordinary hospitals and in reformatories and workhouses. As the presence of such women in the military hospital is found to be of the highest advantage in the relief of bodily suffering, and as an instrumentality for imparting religious consolation, why then, it is asked, should not the same benefits be extended to institutions at home, which are manifestly defective in this respect? There is good reason to believe that there would be no lack of that of the required agency if government and public opinion could be brought to sanction its employment. In continental countries, this agency has been long at work, and according to all reliable accounts, with the most complete success. Here, in England, it would not be desirable, or even practicable, to copy the system pursued in Roman Catholic states. Now, Roman Catholic states, continentally talking about Portugal, Spain, Italy, Above all things, we should object to any formal setting aside of the individual under the obligation of a vow, or to any conditions of arrangement affecting personal liberty. Such conditions would not assort with English views and sentiments, and besides we are persuaded that they are perfectly unnecessary. The common feelings of humanity, sanctioned and sustained by religious principle, would be found to be sufficient. There being numbers of freemen almost wholly unconnected with home or family relations, who require nothing so much as a sphere of honourable activity for their faculties, it is not to be doubted that many of them would gladly enter upon a work affording them opportunities of doing good among the suffering and depraved of their fellow creatures, and would engage in it under impression of an earnest sense of duty. So I can apprehend here that would be rather embarrassing if the man could not support his wife, so she'd rather do it as a charitable duty than give the appearance that she has to do the work because she needs the money and her husband can't support her fully. Some experiments have already been made which show that this proposed labor of love and mercy is within the range of practicability. A staff of volunteer lady nurses, with paid and trained nurses under their orders, has been now for some time employed in King's College Hospital. Respecting them, it is observed by Mrs. Jameson, I have the testimony of one of the gentlemen filling a high official situation at the hospital, and was at first opposed to the introduction of those ladies, or at least most doubtful of their success, that they have up to this time succeeded, that strong prejudices have been overcome, that there has been a purifying and harmonizing influence at work since their arrival. There appears to be no difficulty about the ladies and the medical men working well together, but it is likely that if the experiment were judiciously extended, there will be any fear of its failure. Among the facts collected by Mrs. Jameson, hearing upon the salutary effects of feminine influences in the continental hospitals, there are some which are very striking. One of the directors of the great military hospital at Turin, she says, told me that he regarded it as one of the best deeds of his life, that he had recommended and carried through the employment of the Sisters of Charity in this institution. Before the introduction of these ladies, the sick soldiers had been nursed by orderlies sent from the neighboring barracks, men chosen because they were unfit for the work. The most rigid discipline was necessary to keep them in order, and the dirt, neglect, and general immorality were frightful. Any change was, however, resisted by the military and medical authorities till the invasion of the cholera. Then the orderlies became, most of them, useless, distracted, and almost paralyzed with terror. I mean, they called the useless soldiers who were not fit for war to look after the sick men, but it was so terrifying the way they were looking at and keeping the place dirt and neglecting and possibly abusing the patients that they wanted something else. But that was not possible until cholera came up, and then the nuns were seen as an attractive option. This is just, they were more dispensable according to this logic. Another excellent hospital at Turin, that of St. John, contained when I visited 400 patients, a nearly equal number of men and women. There were besides a separate ward for 6 children and 2 wards containing about 60 incurables, the bedridden and the helpless poor, of the same class which find refuge in workhouses. Okay, we'll keep reading another day. Thank you for staying with me for the reading of the Ladies Treasury Vol I, 857. Have a fantastic week. Bye-bye.